Hello guys, only one place to start today, and that is with the link to Chelsea's Kai Havertz. It's a story that's really gathered momentum over the past couple of days or so. Was mentioned as being some interest there, I think, in the Telegraph, and then we saw it gain a lot of traction online, on social media. I know that Arsblog wrote about it and said he knew that the interest was credible. And then by the end of yesterday, we had reports of a first offer from Arsenal from David Ornstein in the Athletic. So went pretty quickly from sort of possible interest to an official proposal of some kind has been submitted. One thing just on the sort of football media side of things that I've noticed is that during a transfer window, we always urge you to kind of trust official sources, but there were some unofficial sources who were absolutely spot on about this, Arsblog among them. And I do think it's really interesting, there's such a proliferation of information out there now, and some of it I look at and it's just absolute nonsense. But then others, get information and they're not traditional journalists, they're not part of newspapers or, established websites sometimes, but their information, from everything I hear and know, is absolutely spot on. And I think this is just a consequence of the internet, that it's much easier for people to connect with, reach out to, receive information from people who are really close to these situations. And I think it's led to, a lot of these ITKs, as they say, are nonsense, are writing fiction, but there are plenty of unofficial sources whose information is very, very good. I think it's an interesting thing, will they start getting credited for the exclusives? Will it be, a story in the Athletic by David Ornstein, hat tip to team news and ticks? I don't know, but and nonetheless, let's talk about the player and let's talk about the deal. I learned a little bit more about it sort of over the past few days, and the place to start with it is that there is an opportunity at Chelsea. They're a club that needs to sell players, needs to move people on. And other clubs, big clubs, realise that. Manchester United are trying to sign Mason Mount and trying to do it for a knockdown fee. Even Man City are looking to sign Kovacic for their midfield. And I imagine probably driving a high bargain on that because they've got the agreement of the player. And then Arsenal have come circling, looking potentially to take Kai Havertz. He is a very talented player. My colleague at The Athletic, Liam Toomey, put a tweet up, and I'll see if I can find it actually quickly now, because I think it's illustrative of, here you go, Liam Toomey. There's no denying his Chelsea career hasn't lived up to that night in Porto. I don't know what happened in Porto, but I'm still very much of the belief that if he does leave, Havertz will be exasperatingly brilliant at his next club. And as you know, I've got Chelsea fans in my family, and having spoken to them about this player, that is a view, that is a sentiment that they echoed, that he has been disappointing, particularly in the last few months. But then who hasn't at Chelsea, to be fair to him? It's a chaotic club, but no one really doubts that there is massive talent and ability there. And I have to hope that much as he saw something in Gabriel Jesus that maybe could be ignited and go to another level at a different club, I have to hope that if Mikel Arteta is convinced about the talent level of Kai Havertz, that he can extract a more consistent level of performance from him. What is he? Well, I think for Arsenal, primarily, he's viewed as someone who could play through the middle as a number 9, a 9.5, something between a 9 and a 10. Someone who could link the play, operate probably as close to a conventional target man as I think Arteta is ever going to go. There's been talk of, do we need a different type of forward? Do we need a tall forward? Do we need someone who's good in the air? Well, Arteta was never going to be inclined to sign an Andy Carroll, to use an example. But Havertz, I think, might be the closest he would go in that respect. He's a tall, angular forward who's good in the air. Scores a lot of headed goals. Go and watch his goals for Chelsea. There's a lot of headers in there, a lot of very good headers. I think that in body frame, he reminds me of Robin van Persie a lot. And talent-wise, I think potentially in terms of pure ability, he's comparable. Obviously he's 24, but I would say at 24, Robin van Persie hadn't done a great deal. So it doesn't mean that there are not levels to his game that we're yet to see. I think, like I say, primarily a central striker, but also someone who can rotate in wide areas, who can play as a second striker if we ever want to go to two up front, and also someone who potentially maybe could play in an advanced midfield role. I think that it would mean having to field a more purely defensive midfield player behind, but you know, Declan Rice could be that guy. So I think that would be an option, something he would do in a game maybe where Arsenal were expected to dominate the ball, expected to go forward and score goals. But I think this is a striving principally to augment the attack. You know, one of the things I was learning about Arsenal in this window is that they felt there was one more position in the lines of attack that could be filled. I think if Havertz comes in, he would be that. Yes, he could play on the right at times, but I'm not sure he's close enough to Bukayo Saka stylistically. I think what he is a different type of centre forward, and actually, I think it's Gabriel Jesus who we might see more in wide positions, with Havertz playing through the middle. What else to say about this deal? I quite like it. I quite like it. A lot of people don't. I think that he's a very gifted player and incredibly well thought of from his time in Germany. As I say, he's not quite hit the heights at Chelsea, but then neither did Kevin De Bruyne, neither did Mohamed Salah. I think there's something very appealing to me. Maybe it's because of the Chelsea fans in my family about the idea of taking a player from Stamford Bridge who hasn't fulfilled his potential and seeing him improve at Arsenal, seeing him potentially explode at Arsenal. That's a prospect I would relish. It would hurt Chelsea fans. I think we may be able to leverage their market position, their need to sell a little bit to try and get a knockdown on the price. I think there are parallels with the João Felix interest in January, where Arsenal wanted to kind of rehabilitate a player at considerable expense. Ultimately, that player went to Chelsea. This, I think, would be a similar signing to take on. But I mentioned the expense, and there would be significant expense. Chelsea would like 70 million or so for Kai Havertz. My understanding is Arsenal would like to pay a lot less than that, and in fact won't go to that level, possibly can't go to that level. But in salary terms alone, you know, depending on what you read, Havertz earns somewhere between £200,000 a week and total package of £300,000. I mean, at Arsenal, that is really at the heavy end of what they are paying. Maybe as a Champions League club, that is simply what, you know, you're going to end up paying for top players. But that would suggest to me this isn't someone they're bringing in to think, well, he's a definite backup. You know, if Arsenal do this deal, he will be at least a rotation option or someone who takes a place, you know, fairly regularly in the starting 11. You know, be on more money than Trossard and Nketiah, Reece Nelson, other players, Fabio Vieira, in contention for sort of similar spots in the team. So I think he would be expecting to play. I mean, part of the reason he wanted to leave Chelsea, the main reason is that he won't sign a contract. He's got 2 years to run. But another factor will be that he wants to play, because he wants to retain his place in the German international setup, where he's been very good for the most part. I mean, his goals and assists for Germany are really impressive. Just his goal record, he's got 13 goals in 35 international games, pretty decent. So let's see. I know the reservations. The reservations are he's had a very poor few months at Chelsea, generally not set the world alight during his time there. I think there's a feeling that, is he physical enough? Is he hungry enough? You know, he suffers a little bit from that sort of Mesut Ozil perception of you looking very languid on the field. I watched an interesting clip with Thomas Tuchel, who cited Dimitar Berbatov as a player he reminds him of. I can see that. He also mentioned Van Persie again, and he mentioned Dennis Bergkamp. I think Kai Havertz in the past has expressed his admiration for Thierry Henry. He is much more a Bergkamp Van Persie in terms of the type of player he is. Van Persie is the one that rings most true to me. He finishes brilliantly off his left foot. He's got that sort of broad build to be able to take the ball back to goal. Fantastic first touch, intelligence to link the play. I think he is that. I think he is that type of forward really in this Arsenal system. But let's see. It's still relatively early days. The first proposal made. I think the focus is still landing Declan Rice. We saw David saying in his report yesterday that a bid is pretty close to going in and they don't want to waste West Ham's time. Interested to see what level that will be at. Will it be that kind of 90 million-ish figure that we've read a bit about? I think it would have to be really for West Ham to accept it swiftly. So it could be an eventful few days. The fixture list is out today as well. I've just taken a look at that, just a brief glance. Looks like a tough run-in, which will bring back a few bad memories for Arsenal fans. Anyway, Kai Havertz, what do you think? It's not been a popular one. I will admit that generally I am inclined to see the best in things because I have great faith in this recruitment team and the coaching staff in terms of their talent selection. You know, we've been through the hand-wringing over should we sign Aaron Ramsdale, should we sign Ben White, is Leandro Trossard underwhelming, all these things, you know, is Jorginho just coming here for a paycheck? And I think more times than not, we've been disproven in some of our fears. In fact, some of the signings we've been most excited about as fans, like Lokonga and, you know, Tavares, you know, we're going to make loads of money on these guys because we've bought them in young. In some ways, they've been the most disappointing. When the club goes hard for a player, generally they get it right. It's interesting, you know, Mudryk is a player we desperately wanted who's really disappointed at Chelsea. Maybe we feel there is a lot more talent in there to be unlocked, and maybe we're looking at Havertz and thinking similar situation in the right environment. Could he thrive? Let's wait and see. I'm open to it. I'd love it if it upset Chelsea fans. We'll wait and see.